Good morning. This is Dr. Kemi. It is the 31st of July, 2024. I want to put a warning out here today. If you know anybody that lives in Toronto, Canada, let them see this video. Share it. It is so important because there are things happening around the world that should not be happening because people were not informed of what was going to happen. How many times did I say happen in that sentence? You need to know what's happening. You need to know if you're walking into danger. When I lived in Toronto, Canada, from 2007 to 2012, there was a lot of gun and gang violence in Toronto. An area called Jane and Finch, Jane Street, where it meets Finch, and Driftwood Circle, that entire area was filled with gang violence. When gangs, have their territories, they have their colors. It was the Chuck Fan Bloods, red, and the Driftwood Crips, blue. The same style that Los Angeles Crips and Bloods use is what's going on in Toronto. At a certain time, there's an increase in gun violence, and the Toronto police has to put their, guards up and start looking for potential violence. The one thing they do in Toronto is they're killing people at bus stops. I have been in a lot of advocacy for people who have lost their lives at bus stops. Okay? Jarvis and Remy was one of them, and that was a very, very big one for me. And we still have not solved Jarvis' murder, but we believe that the killer himself has been killed in another murder. But the, bus stop shootings were just too much in Toronto that there's one in the news again that happened this year in February of 2024. A Ghanaian man by the name of Adu Boachi, he left Ghana sometimes around the fall. I think it was October, and he jackpad, like all of us jackpad. Jackpot means to leave a country swiftly and move to another to relocate. Normally, when people go to Canada or any country like that, they try to settle down and then they'll bring their family later when they apply. Once they've gotten their residency, they can apply for their family. Adu left a wife and 4 children in Ghana. And what happened was that I saw an interview with the wife in Ghana. It was so heart-wrenching. And I just happened to be in Ghana at that time for the African Games. And I saw an interview on TV news of this woman who's just lost her husband in Toronto, Canada. And when I heard Driftwood, I said, oh, Jesus. Driftwood Circle, Jane Street, along the corridors of Jane and Wilson, Jane and Lawrence, Jane and Treadway, is the home of immigrants. New immigrants go there first. And a lot of crime happens on Jane Street. Toronto police knows, they'll tell you, it's online. And what happens is I lived in 3 different intersections of Jane Street, so I'm familiar with that. And I was a gun violence advocate from 2007 to 2012. So what I discovered was that this young man was somehow staying around Driftwood. And maybe he doesn't know it's a bad area. Some people who live in other parts of Canada and Toronto will tell you, oh, Driftwood Circle, no. So they've labeled it and stereotyped it and stigmatized that whole area as bad, gun violence all the time. But it keeps happening. And what do? I was part of the team that helped Chief Blair, Deputy Chief Slowly, and the Toronto Police in general on Project Marvel. We seized a lot of guns. We seized a lot of money. We seized a lot of weapons. And at the end of the day, this is still happening in 2024. I left Canada in 2012. That was 12 years ago. Please. The children I left in Canada, when I took my son with me, my son was 11. The children I left in Canada were also 11. Now we got 23, 24-year-olds shooting at Driftwood again. The surveillance camera captured the person, but the person had masks and hoodie on. It's a young person. These are the 11-year-olds I left behind. And then I asked my son where his classmates are on Facebook. They're doing great, but 2 of them went to prison for gang banging. That's what my son told me. You got to realize these children are not 23, 24. Adu Boachi, you have seen the funeral. You have seen how his children went crazy. They had to procure visas to Canada for the for the wife and the children. Imagine, the visas they're supposed to use to go and move there with the husband, they went there to bury the husband. The funeral was so emotional. So why am I doing this video? I want everyone that's Ghanaian Nigerian, anyone that can see this video to know about Driftwood. It has a long history of gun violence and gang activity. So what do we do? This is the bus stop where everybody is killed all the time. Jane and Finch bus stop. This is a picture of me at Jane and Finch bus stop in 2009. I put on my red wig, my dress, and I stood there, tough, during the daytime. Most people killed at this bus stop were killed during the daytime. And I told my son, who was at that time 9 years old, to take this picture. Now this picture has become iconic. Look at the nice background. This is the most dangerous bus stop in the world. And once again, why am I doing this video? Let me tell you why I'm doing this video. There is a time in Toronto when gang members start initiation. Initiation means new gang members want to join the gangs. There's a lot of gangs. You see what's going on in Jacksonville, Florida, how they came up with Young A Scene, OT 1200, too many gangs. Chicago is the home of all the gangs. 14-year-olds are dying in Chicago. Look at the guns 13, 14-year-olds are carrying in Chicago. There's gang violence in a lot of places around the world. Even in Nigeria, we just call it cultists. So why am I doing this video? I've asked 4 times. I'm doing it because it's summer. Very soon there'll be gang initiation. And when I spoke to one of the gang members in one of my previous interviews when I was in Canada, I had a page on Facebook about this whole gun violence. He told me this is what happens. When a new member wants to join the gang, we have to initiate them. So they got to go out there and do something tough. This guy said, I once told a new member, go to any bus stop and kill someone. Make sure I see it on the news. So someone walks at the bus stop, picks an isolated person, a man standing there, and I think that's what happened to Adu Boachi because he had no criminal record and the police can't seem to think he has any enemies. That gang member will now open fire and kill the person and then go back to the gang leader and tell him, I already killed one person at this bus stop. And then that will be in the news at night and everybody will see who was killed at the bus stop. Then he enters the gang. They go out recklessly taking lives because of gang initiation. And this is the season for gang initiation. Please be careful in Toronto. Be careful. This is so old. They keep doing it and it's ongoing. Babies that are left in Canada are now joining gangs. I'm Dr. Kemi. Thank you for listening.